A homeless man, desperate and hungry, asked Shaquille O'Neal for just $1, expecting little more than a polite refusal. Instead, Shaq gave him far more than he asked, transforming his life in ways the man could never have imagined. It was a warm afternoon in Los Angeles, the sun low in the sky, casting a golden glow over the bustling streets of Hollywood Boulevard. Tourists and shoppers hurried past, their arms laden with bags from high-end stores. Among the sea of well-dressed people, a scruffy homeless man sat on the corner, his clothes worn and dirty, his hair matted. His name was Dave. He clutched a small cardboard sign that read, "Hungry, anything helps." Dave's stomach growled, but he was used to it. Most people walked by without so much as a glance. Some deliberately crossed the street to avoid him. He sighed, looking at the few coins in front of him. It wasn't enough for even a slice of pizza. Days like this made him wonder if he was truly invisible. Just as Dave was about to pack up and call it a day, a shadow fell over him. What happened next would change his life forever. He looked up and saw a towering man in a simple black hoodie and basketball shorts. The man's face was partially hidden by sunglasses and a baseball cap, but something about him seemed familiar. The man crouched down, bringing himself to Dave's eye level. "Hey man," he said in a deep, kind voice. "How's it going?" Dave blinked, caught off guard. No one ever stopped to talk to him, let alone someone who looked like this guy. He cleared his throat. "Could be better," he mumbled. "Just trying to get enough for a meal." The man nodded, glancing at Dave's sign. He pulled out his wallet, and Dave braced himself for $1, maybe $2, if he was lucky. Instead, the man looked him in the eye and said, "How about I do more than that? Let's get you sorted out today." Dave's mouth fell open. "You serious?" he asked, unsure if he'd heard right. "Dead serious," the man replied, standing up and extending a hand to help Dave up. "Let's start with some food. You like barbecue?" Dave hesitated, but the man's smile was warm, and his offer sounded genuine. He took the man's hand and stood, his legs shaky from hunger. "Yeah," Dave said softly. "I love barbecue." As they walked, Dave noticed people staring at them, some even pulling out their phones to snap pictures. "Why is everyone looking at us?" Dave asked nervously. The man chuckled. "They probably recognize me." He pulled down his sunglasses, and Dave's jaw dropped. "You're Shaq," he blurted out. Shaquille O'Neal grinned, guilty. Dave hesitated for a moment, staring down at the small pile of coins in his hand. His stomach growled again, louder this time, and he reluctantly looked back up at Shaq, who was still smiling warmly. "You don't have to do this," Dave said, his voice quiet, almost embarrassed. Shaq raised an eyebrow and shrugged. "Man, it's just food," he said casually, but there was kindness in his tone. "Everybody deserves to eat, and trust me, I've been hungry before. Ain't no shame in that." Dave nodded slowly. "Okay, I guess," he said, though he still wasn't sure. If this was real, Shaq's face lit up. "Good, now let's go find a spot." He glanced up and down the street before pointing to a nearby barbecue joint with a neon pig on the sign. "How do you feel about barbecue? You like ribs? Pulled pork?" Dave's mouth watered at the thought. He couldn't remember the last time he'd had a proper meal, let alone something as indulgent as barbecue. "Yeah," he said quickly. "I love barbecue." Shaq grinned. "That's what I like to hear. Come on, my treat." As they walked down the sidewalk, Dave couldn't help but glance nervously at the people around them. A few were staring openly, whispering to each other, probably because they recognized Shaq. It felt surreal. Here he was, just a scruffy guy off the street, walking alongside one of the most famous athletes in the world, like they were old friends. Friends. Shaq noticed Dave's hesitation and gave him a reassuring pat on the back. "Don't worry about them," he said in a low voice. "Let them stare. You're with me. It's all good." When they reached the restaurant, Shaq pulled the door open and motioned for Dave to go in first. The warm, smoky smell of barbecue hit them immediately, making Dave's stomach growl. He tried to stifle the noise, but Shaq heard it and chuckled. "Sounds like you're ready to eat," Shaq said, leading the way to the counter. The cashier looked up, her eyes widening when she saw Shaq. "Oh my gosh, are you—" Shaq held up a hand and smiled. Yeah, it's me. But don't make a big deal about it, all right? We're just here for some food." The cashier nodded quickly, clearly starstruck, but trying to stay professional. "Of course. What can I get for you?" Shaq turned to Dave. "Go ahead, man. Order whatever you want." Dave froze, staring at the menu board. The options felt overwhelming. Pulled pork, ribs, brisket, sides of cornbread and collard greens. He didn't know where to start, but just as Dave opened his mouth to order, Shaq leaned in and said something that left everyone in the restaurant speechless. Shaq must have noticed the hesitation, because he leaned down slightly and said, "Take your time. It's all good, man. Pick what sounds good to you." Dave swallowed hard and finally pointed to the pulled pork sandwich. "He'll take that," he said. Then, after a pause, added, "And, mac and cheese and sweet tea." Shaq nodded approvingly. "Solid choice. That mac and cheese is probably fire." Then he turned back to the cashier. "All right, he'll take the rib platter, extra sauce, and throw in a couple of those cornbread muffins too. Can't have barbecue without cornbread." The cashier rang up the order, still sneaking glances at Shaq as she did. When she announced the total, Shaq handed over a crisp $100 bill without hesitation. "Keep the change," he said with a wink. The cashier stammered out a thank you, her hands trembling slightly, as she handed Shaq the receipt. They found a table by the window, and Shaq made sure Dave sat down first. "So," Shaq said, leaning back in his chair, "what's your story, man? How'd you end up out here?" Dave hesitated, unsure how much to share, but Shaq's relaxed demeanor put him at ease. He began to talk about losing his job, the eviction, and how hard it had been to get back on his feet. Shaq listened intently, nodding occasionally, but never interrupting. When the food arrived, Dave's eyes widened at the sight of his plate. The pulled pork sandwich was massive. The mac and cheese was creamy and golden, and the sweet tea came in a cup the size of his head. "Go on," Shaq said, gesturing at the food. "Dig in." Dave picked up the sandwich, took a bite, and immediately closed his eyes. It was better than he'd imagined. Savory, tender, and smoky, with just the right amount of sauce. "This is amazing," he said around a mouthful. Shaq laughed. "Told you, man. Barbecue never disappoints." They ate in companionable silence for a while, the hum of the restaurant around them. For the first time in a long time, Dave felt normal. Like, he wasn't just some invisible guy on the street, but a person who mattered. As he polished off the last bite of his sandwich, Dave looked up at Shaq, gratitude shining in his eyes. "I don't know how to thank you," he said quietly. Shaq waved a hand. "You don't have to thank me, man. I'm just glad I could help. Everyone needs a little lift sometimes, you know." Dave nodded, the lump in his throat making it hard to speak. He hadn't felt this kind of kindness in years. And for the first time in a long time, he felt like things might actually get better. But just as Dave thought the meal was the end of Shaq's generosity, the NBA legend leaned forward and said something that completely changed the course of his life. After they finished their meal, Shaq leaned back in his chair and smiled. All right, next stop. Next stop, Dave asked, confused. Yep, Shaq said, standing up. You need more than just a meal. Let's get you cleaned up. As they left the barbecue joint, Dave felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the meal. He hadn't just been fed. He'd been seen, treated like a person. All right, my man, Shaq said, clapping him on the back. Next stop, let's get you cleaned up. How do you feel about a little self-care? Dave blinked, surprised. Self-care? He repeated, unsure what Shaq meant. Shaq chuckled. Yeah, you know, haircut, shave, hot shower, all that good stuff. There's a spa a few blocks from here. They'll get you looking fresh. Dave hesitated, glancing down at his worn clothes and grimy hands. I don't know, Shaq. I don't think a place like that would want someone like me in there. Shaq stopped walking and turned to face Dave, his expression serious. Hey, don't ever say that, he said firmly. Everyone deserves to feel good about themselves. You're not someone like me or someone like them. You're just you, and that's enough. Trust me on this. Dave nodded slowly, moved by Shaq's words. All right, he said quietly. Let's do it. The walk to the spa was short, but Dave's nerves grew with every step. The place Shaq had in mind was sleek and modern, with large glass windows and a polished sign. It looked like the kind of place that catered to rich businessmen and celebrities, not someone who'd been living on the streets. When they walked in, the receptionist looked up, her professional smile freezing in place when she saw Shaq. Oh my goodness, she stammered. Welcome. How can we help you today? Shaq gave her an easy grin. Hey there, I've got my buddy Dave here. He needs the works. Haircut, shave, shower, hook him up. The receptionist glanced at Dave, her smile softening. Of course, she said warmly. We'd be happy to take care of him. Dave shifted uncomfortably, feeling out of place in the elegant lobby, but Shaq nudged him forward gently. Go on, he said. They're going to take good care of you. I'll wait out here. A kind stylist led Dave to the back, chatting with him as she worked. She started with his hair, trimming away the matted tangles until his head felt lighter. Then came the shave, a careful, soothing process that left his face feeling smooth for the first time in years. Finally, she handed him a fluffy towel and directed him to the showers. The hot water was a revelation. Dave stood under the stream for a long time, letting it wash away the grime and tension. By the time he stepped out, dressed in clean clothes Shaq had thoughtfully picked up earlier, he felt like a new man. When he returned to the lobby, Shaq was lounging in a chair, scrolling through his phone. He looked up as Dave approached and broke into a wide grin. Look at you, man, Shaq said, standing up and gesturing dramatically. You clean up real nice. I'm telling you, Hollywood's going to be calling any day now. Dave laughed, his face breaking into a genuine smile. I don't know about Hollywood, but thanks. I feel like a new person. Shaq clapped him on the shoulder. That's what I'm talking about. Now that you're feeling good, let's keep this train rolling. You got time for a little shopping? Shopping? Dave asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. But what Shaq did next left everyone in the spa, including Dave, absolutely speechless. Yeah, man. You need some new threads to go with that fresh look. Trust me, a good outfit can make you feel like $1,000,000. Let's hit the mall. As they headed toward the door, Dave paused and turned to Shaq. Why are you doing all this for me? He asked, his voice quiet but steady. Shaq looked at him, his expression serious but kind. Because I can, he said simply, and because I've been blessed in my life. It's only right to pass that on when I can. Everybody deserves a little help sometimes. Dave nodded, his throat tight with emotion. He didn't have the words to express what he felt,